Now, there is this saying in gacha games where a DPS may only last temporarily, but the support may last forever. There is nothing to support if the DPS to be supported is not strong enough. Gilberta is going to be our first ever rate up support and the second limited unit in Arknights Endfield, who not only greets you with a heart every day, but on top of that is a really good support comparable to the likes of Ardelia. Hey guys, PokkeCorp here, and today we're going to be taking a look into Gilberta's kit, exactly what she's going to be offering for you and your teammates. And although you might think, oh my god, support is going to be a must pull, but that might not be the case in Arknights Endfield as we take a look into her team compositions later, right? She's going to specialize in crowd control, debuffs, as well as arts inflictions. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into her kit. So for Gilberta's basic attack, unlike the other two limited operators, she only has a 4-sequence string that deals nature damage. And the final strike will deal stagger, and the dive attack will deal nature damage to nearby enemies. She also has the traditional effect of a finisher, recovering a couple of skill points, nothing too much to worry about. For almost every single scenario, you're never going to be really using Gilberta as the main DPS, so you always leave her at the side and the AI will just take away from the basic attack. Now, for the battle skill, it is going to be a very simple skill which pulls in nearby enemies, dealing nature damage, and after the channeling ends, the skills will implode, dealing nature damage while applying nature infliction. This is a very standard and useful skill with added crowd control to improve your overall grouping. Now, since this skill has a very long animation, and during that time you cannot basic attack if she's a control operator, you pretty much want to just cast this skill when she's not your control operator to allow your main DPS to continue attacking. Then for a combo skill, it's going to be dealing damage and applying lift to targets when an art reaction is applied to an enemy. This skill will allow to stack vulnerability, essentially increasing your role as a universal support. Now, this particular skill will force lift on the target, which is going to be really decent for your physical team comps, but generally speaking, you're not going to be worried about it that much, even if you're going to be running her in like other team comps, for example, nature and cryo. Now, one important thing to note is that this combo skill will actually trigger with any art reaction, meaning that you can pretty much just run her with any of the elemental teams, namely, for example, if you're going to be proccing a corrosion, combustion, electrification, so on and so forth. Now, lastly, for our ultimate, it creates a massive gravity field that deals damage to the enemies and applies nature infliction. Enemies in the field are also going to be slowed and receive an additional amount of art susceptibility that scales off of enemies' vulnerability stacks. Now, as a bonus, is going to be when the enemies in the field is already lifted, they will stay lifted until the field disappears. So this ultimate has a very strong universal debuffing capabilities. So the general rotation for this ultimate is you always want to cast this immediately after you cast your battle skill. So while the enemy is lifted, you'll stack on even more debuffs for the enemies that have the lift debuff. Now, moving on to the talents first of Reignition, it is very exceptional because this is going to be our first and only ultimate gain efficiency universal buff for 7% simply by just being your team. Now, unfortunately, this is only going to be for your guards, casters, and supporters, making your options a lot more restrictive as the current two best DPS, which is going to be your Yvonne as well as Leviathan, is not going to benefit from this talent. So mainly, this is going to be for your sub DPSs and your other supports in the team if you're going to be running Gilberta. Now, for the talent do Scorching Hit, this is a very nice sustain option, basically healing your control operator or the team if you hit 2 or more enemies with better combo skill. Now, note that this only heals your teammates if the control operator's HP is already full. So this talent does have its drawbacks and is completely useless if the fight is going to be single target, but it is a pretty nice addition, especially against mob content, which most of our current bosses will always have some kind of phases where they will spawn in additional mobs for you to make use of this heal. Then for the skill leveling priority, focus on the combo skill and the ultimate, followed by the battle skill as well as basic attack. The overall damage multipliers on the battle skill is not really worth the investments because as the most supports are going to be left, you are going to be leaving her only at level 60 out of 80, and if she's not going to be dealing any damage and only applying nature infliction, then combo skill and ultimate is going to be where your main resources should go for. Then before we get into her potentials, her factory skills are going to be tied to your manufacturing cabin, providing a 30% efficiency buff for weapon EXP and reducing the operator's mood drop rate by 18%, which is going to be good enough for most situations. So now talking about the potentials of her dupes, for P1 is going to be a very simple buff to the battle skills effect radius, which will improve her grouping abilities, but it's not going to be a very notable upgrade. This will be quite nice for overall farming and just daily quality of life, but nothing too crazy for the damage. Now, the P2 looks a little bit hard to understand, but what it essentially does is that every enemy is treated as a base effect of 1 vulnerability, meaning if they have, for example, 2 vulnerability, they will add on by 1 more, and then you multiply that by the art susceptibility effect. So to summarize, this is basically whatever vulnerability you have, you just add 1 more, like X plus 1, which will increase the effect of your art susceptibility based on the ultimate scaling. That's it. Then for the P3 is increasing your talent one's effect by 5%, which is very nice for your energy regeneration, but once again, not going to be there for your strikers. P4, universal ultimate energy cost reduction by 15%, and lastly, your P5 will reduce your combo skill cooldown by 2 seconds and increase the damage multiplier by 1.3x on the original. Overall, most of these potentials are not going to be that crazy, but the P2 does show to be pretty decent, especially for having an overall higher art accessibility debuff. So if a kit being established, her actual core gameplay is where Gilberta will definitely be your support, grouping enemies and applying vulnerability plus nature inflictions. Your main focus is to build as many vulnerability stacks as possible with her and her teammates, and then you activate her ultimate, massively debuffing the enemies, proceeding to nuke them with your main DPS. You wouldn't ever use her as a control on-field operator for most of the time, and when it comes to skills, you will want to group the enemies with a battle skill, triggering a combo to lift the enemies, while also applying vulnerability as well as your teammates' debuffs, activating the ultimate and nulling all of your damage. So for example rotation, we are going to be using her in an electric team over here. So you're going to start with Gilberta's battle skill and then into Alviana's basic attack until before the final strike. You activate Perlega's battle skill and followed by Alviana's basic attack for her final strike. At this point, you can then trigger your triple combo skill for Gilberta, Arlight as well as Perlega, and I'm finally going to be going for the Alviana. At this point, Arlight battle skill into a combo skill will then follow back out with Alviana's basic attack final strike, followed by at this point, all of your operators should have the ultimate where you're going to be activating everyone. You always want to activate Gilberta's ultimate first for all of the debuffs, followed by then Perlega, Arlight, and Alviana. And then you can run while activating with AV's basic attack as well as combo skill. So the overall explanation for this rotation is you want to have Gilberta's battle skill to apply nature infliction and to group enemies. Since the second part of the skill is going to be delayed, you can basic attack with Alviana before her final strike. Once nature infliction is applied, you can then use Perlega's battle skill to trigger electrification, activating Gilberta and Arlight's combo attacks. Now the reason why you only final strike with AV after Perlega's battle skill is to ensure that a combo skill does not trigger before Gilberta or Arlight. Now, after doing this first sequence, you should have Gilberta, Arlight, and Perlega's combo skill lined up. So after Perlega's combo, she will then trigger Alviana's combo. And ideally, all of your ultimates over here should be active. But if not, continue using AV's basic attack while using Arlight's battle skill and combo skill. Make sure that before you move into the ultimate chain, you land a final strike first and apply electric infliction with Perlega's combo skill. Now with all of your ultimates ready, you can start with Gilberta to apply the debuffs, Perlega's ultimate for damage, and Arlight's ultimate for electrification. Then drop Alviana's ultimate into the final strike, ending it off with the combo skill to draw all the lightning lances back to you for the absolute insane damage. So now for the gear recommendations, the main attribute is going to be Will with Intellect as the secondary. So for the pure debuffing capabilities, we have a very universal Eternal Starry Night, which is going to be an excellent window for us to increase our ultimate damage as well as the party's damage further. It will increase your wearer's HP, and when any sort of debuffs is going to be increasing, you are going to be increase your team-wide damage by 16% for 15 seconds. Now for this case, it's going to be the susceptibility debuff from the ultimate. And keep in mind, for this particular set, you cannot stack this on with other units, so only use one of this set for any of the supports. In this case, it is going to be Gilberta. So because this only activates during Gilberta's ultimate, which means the HP buff is what she'll be getting most of the time, you want to line up your entire team's ultimate damage for that very nice burst. For the kits and the gloves, you'll want Will and Intellect and ultimate gain for her ultimate, because this is going to be the most important rotation for Gilberta. For the body, you can find one Will Agility as well as ultimate gain. However, on the other hand, if you're going to be only caring about Gilberta's sustain capabilities without really caring about damage, you could consider running our classic Links option. It will give you HP treatment efficiency and a variety of damage reduction against all type damage, but keep in mind for the sustain set over here is going to be more niche because you cannot actually get any healing unless you go up against more than 2 targets at the battle, right? But if you do want to go for this, going for the Link slap into the Link's armor with the Link's gloves is going to be fine, and then going for more ultimate gain efficiency as well as Will. And then last but not least, if you want to increase your damage even more, especially those with P5 Gilberta, you can consider running something like Hot Work, because if you can get Gilberta to apply corrosion, which is possible because nature infliction plus any other elements will give you corrosion, it will increase your nature damage by 50%, making your ultimate and combo skill hit pretty hard as well. But this is not going to be recommended for P0 users. So for the body and kits, it's going to be very similar, going for Will and Intellect as much as possible, but for the secondary subset, you're going to be going for Arts Intensity as well as ultimate gain. Now jumping into the weapon, Delivery Guarantee is going to be a signature weapon, granting her Will and ultimate gain efficiency. With its skill granting increased nature damage when she applies lift, the team gains Arts damage dealt, and for every enemy lifted, they will gain an additional Arts damage dealt, stacking up to 3 times. This weapon is incredibly strong, giving us team-wide buffs with very easy way to activate this, as well as slightly buffing Gilberta's personal damage. However, if you do not have this signature weapon, you can go for Opus Edge Figure, which is a great alternative providing will as well as nature damage. With its skill providing team-wide Arts damage as well, this is going to be where you are going to be getting the closer substitute, getting from the free battle pass, which everybody will be getting a copy from, overall if you're going to be able to unlock the secondary option. This effect is pretty much almost the same as a signature but with lower multipliers, so for players who do not want to get this signature weapon, this is going to be an excellent alternative. If you do want to go for the DPS route, then Oblivion is going to be your best bet, but it is not really too recommended. For other 5-star alternatives, Freedom is an option for a sustain, but for those for extra support, Stanza of Memorials is going to be the only option, making our ultimate giving us a team an attack buff if they are a different element, which is going to be fine since we don't really have a nature DPS for now. Then for the 4-star, which is really the last resort, you can go for the Fluorescent Rock, which is pretty much going to be giving you a whale, but not really too recommended. Now lastly, we're going to be talking about Gilberta's team comp, which is honestly very universal, a little bit reminiscent of Ardelia, practically having the ability to run with every single team, but of course, that does not mean she's going to be the best in slot. So when it comes to running Gilberta in the Levitate Heat team or the Fire team, yes, she can work 10 to the art susceptibility, but when it comes down to it, Levitate doesn't really need enemy grouping as her attack range is very wide, and running her is going to be a slight loss in DPS. Besides, our data will make a better slot providing more consistent corrosion as she applies art susceptibility as well. Not only that, our data sustain is just way more comfortable, so for example, if your sustain issue is gonna be a bit of a problem, you can consider replacing Arknights with Gilberta and you run both Gilberta and our data in the same team, but your performance is definitely gonna be way worse because you will not get as much skill points. On the other hand, Electric team is also going to be a viable option for Gilberta, providing the much needed crowd control as well as extra damage amplification via the art susceptibility. She can also help apply electrification since she has built-in nature infliction and gives ultimate game efficiency to your entire team. As of this moment, this is pretty much going to be one of the more combo slots because we don't really have a very nice electric team as of right now. But the actual best in slot for Gilberta as of this current moment is definitely going to be the cryo team. So because of Yvonne's rework, she can now apply solidification to nature or crowd inflicted enemies, so Gilberta can see a lot more play here. Her Us debuff and ultimate gain is also very useful, even though Yvonne is now a striker and won't receive it, but the rest of her teammates will, such as for example Zalhi. Well, Gilberta's ultimate rotation is going to be rather short for Yvonne as she wants to build up her stacks, but Gilberta's debuff can be very useful in AoE scenarios, which is where Yvonne is going to be lagging. With a 4th slot interchangeable between Ardelia, Fluorite, Snowshine, or even Arknights. All of the 4 options right now we have in the team, none of them are really going to be the best in slot for Yvonne. I would say just for comfort, Ardelia is going to be there and Arknights is going to be there for the additional skill points, which can then translate into more Zalhi stacks. If you want to, you could also consider running Perdiga just for the electrification, which will then give you increased arch damage take rate. Now, one last team is actually going to be the physical hybrid team. Now, thanks to a lift mechanic, she can potentially see play in a physical hybrid team because she can stack on vulnerability for operators such as the Pen, Chen, etc. And the ultimate efficiency will be very useful for the team. Notably, you can see her playing with Estella in a physical team comp, but this team will focus building on vulnerability stacks, along with Estella's physical susceptibility to deal high damage with Chen and the Pen. Gilberta's grouping is also a very important part of this team, but of course, a lot of variation can exist, for example, replacing Estella for PokkeCorp or Leafan. Unfortunately, if you want to run Gilberta physical team, it means that for our susceptibility is going to be pretty much completely useless, so I personally would not run this over, for example, Cryo or even Electric. So for an overall conclusion, Gilberta's placement as a whole, she mainly suffers from not having a dedicated nature main DPS just for her and mostly acting as an alternative. She will probably never really be best in slot, at least for now, but in the future, the time may change when more units are going to be introduced. Her kit is by no means bad or underwhelming, it is just that no one fully benefits from every single part of the kit. But the main reason for doing that is also because of Ardelia's existence. As an exceptional 6-star who is not only free but also comes with a signature weapon, it is very hard to justify Gilberta's current pool value, especially when most players can actually run Ardelia, and as of right now, we don't really have a 2-team endgame content in Arknights Endfield. But there isn't a main nature DPS right now, which means eventually when we do get one in the future, perhaps they will have the ability to fully utilize Gilberta's live, art susceptibility as well as nature infliction, which will be way better as of the current moment. For now, Gilberta is good enough, but I can see her potentially becoming great in the future when we have more nature DPS. With that, we've come to the end of Gilberta's dummies little guide for Gilberta. Let me know what you guys think of her as well, the overall rotations. All the best for gacha pulls, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.